The setting was a small, rented room on a sweltering summer night. It was an unelectrified space where the heat hung heavy, and the only consistent sound was the rhythmic traffic of rats scurrying across the overhead beams. The resident was a homeopath who had recently begun his medical practice. His earnings were meager. His entire fortune consisted of 60 rupees, a few dhotis, and one solitary black coat. Despite these surroundings, he parried himself with the confidence of a man of high station. He was a bachelor and a doctor, two facts he reminded himself of constantly to justify his extreme self-admiration. Seated before a large table mirror, he scrutinized his features and made a series of calculated adjustments. He decided he would shave daily and grow a thin mustache, all to ensure his presence was felt by anyone who saw him. Even his choice of a life partner was a strategic calculation. He planned to marry a woman doctor with a vast medical practice and a massive fortune, but she had to be fat. He had a valid reason. If he ever made a silly mistake and had to run for his life, she wouldn't be able to catch him. He sat in the silence, his mind filled with these grand visions of his future. Then the overhead noise of the rats stopped, replaced by a dull thud, as if a rubber tube had fallen to the ground. He turned his chair to investigate the noise, still buoyed by the image of the handsome, strategic doctor he believed himself to be. The turn was simultaneous with the arrival of a full-blooded cobra. It wriggled over the back of the chair and landed directly on his shoulder. Before he could react, the snake slithered down his arm and coiled tightly above his elbow. Its hood was spread wide, and its head hung just 3 inches from his face. The man who had been adjusting his smile in the mirror moments ago was now a stone image. He sat perfectly still, holding his breath as his mind raced through the darkness that surrounded his small circle of lamplight. Death was inches away, and he realized he had no medicine in the room to treat a bite. The titles of doctor and bachelor provided no shield. He felt like a foolish man, smiling feebly at his own absolute helplessness. In this room, the 60 rupees in his suitcase and his medical degree were meaningless. All that remained was the desperate internal plea he directed toward the Creator. Then the snake moved. It turned its head away from the doctor and looked into the mirror, seeing its own reflection in the dim light. The predator became as transfixed as its prey. It seemed to be admiring its own beauty, considering a mustache, eyeshadow, or a vermilion spot. This shared distraction saved his life. The snake unwound, slithering onto the table for a closer look. The weight left his arm. The stone image became a man of flesh and blood again. Holding his breath, he rose and stepped out to the veranda. From there, he leapt into the yard and ran for all he was worth. He reached safety because the cobra was taken with its own beauty. The very narcissism the doctor had displayed all evening was the only thing that allowed him to survive. He reached a friend's house and immediately smeared oil over his body, taking a bath to wash away the memory of scales against his skin. When he eventually looked toward his future, the grand plans he had made in the mirror began to unravel. The wealthy, fat doctor he had envisioned never materialized. Instead, his life companion was a thin, reedy person with the gift of a sprinter, someone who could easily catch him if he ever tried to run. The next morning, he returned to his rented room with friends to move his belongings, hoping to put the entire ordeal behind him. There was almost nothing to carry. A thief had broken in during the night and cleaned out the room, taking the 60 rupees and the few clothes he owned. The thief had left one thing behind as a final insult: the doctor's dirty vest. The intruder's sense of cleanliness was so high that he refused to touch the garment, leaving it as the only remnant of the doctor's former pride. By the end of the day, the doctor's ego was entirely dismantled. Fate had stripped his possessions, subverted his marriage plans, and left his hygiene to be judged by a common thief, all while he processed that he owed his life to a vain snake.